Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome. This is your instructor Ms. Era Misra. Today I'm going to give a reinforcement lecture on first year English compulsory. The main purpose of this lecture will be to highlight and review those mistakes which students have repeatedly made not only in their recent exams but in their recent assessments as well. I hope with the help of this visual aid and with the help of your practice at home, these mistakes will be lessened to none in the future. The things which I'm going to discuss today will be your paper attempting skills. I'm going to give a general overview of the mistakes which you have made. Not only that, I'm going to show you some samples of the students and how to attempt your paper very appropriately, very neatly, how to use markers, how to draw margin lines, because a picture worth 1,000 words. So it will help out all the students a lot. Secondly, I'm going to discuss punctuation, but the punctuation section will be discussed in detail. And in the very end, I'm going to discuss reference to the context from the poetry section. Students, before you is basically a paper sample slide. It is very vividly clear over here that how to attempt your paper. 4 different questions have been placed in this particular slide: the question answers, application, punctuation, and translation. The very first thing which you observe here is the presentation, how neat the presentation is, how the student has drawn margin lines. The use of marker is very appropriate in every question. Coming on the very first picture, the use of marker in the question answers section. The student has used marker for enough is enough. It's fine if you're not using marker, but the overall presentation has improved by the use of it. In the application question, first I'm going to discuss the pattern very briefly, starting from the principal with A, government college, city A, B, C. Students, it is very important to note that there is no need to write down your own college name and the city you belong to over here. It is just a sample. It is for your practice. Subject. The student has used marker to write down the subject. Subject, application for fee concession. It is important that the subject you are writing over here should be the same given in your question paper. If by some chance you have overlooked it, if by some chance the subject in your application is incorrect, you won't get any mark. So please be very careful while attempting this section of your subject. Obviously the content matters a lot as well. In the very end, please write down yours obediently. You are writing to your principal, you need to be obedient to her, so yours obediently. In the next line, XYZ, there is no need to write your own name, and parallel to XYZ, write down the date when the application was written on. In the third picture, the punctuation is given, how to attend punctuation, and in the very end, the translation is given. The very first thing which you observe in the translation is how neat the Urdu dictation is, how neat the writing style is. You need to focus on all these things while attempting your paper. Now in this slide, you will see the questions are basically of the moral story and reference to the context. In the moral story, it is very essential to note that in the very beginning you need to write down the topic. 2 models are given in the question. You will choose one model, and when you are starting to write the story, please write down the topic first. For example, here the model was greed is a curse. The student has chosen the story of 3 friends and a bag of gold. So this is essentially the topic of this moral lesson. Write down the topic, leave one line, give the heading of story, write down the story. It will be nice if you made paragraphs. In the very end, please write down the moral, that here the moral is greed is a curse. If by some chance you are not writing down the moral, you won't get any mark, because note it, 2 morals were given in the questions. So it is part and parcel of getting marks in this question. Next question is of basically reference to the context. It is basically the explanation of a stanza or any verses given to you in the examination. I'm not going to discuss this thing here in detail because I have already planned to discuss it in the very end of my presentation. Now we are going to discuss punctuation. And what are punctuations? Punctuations are basically the integral part of sentence formation. It is an essential part of sentence making. Without the use of correct punctuation, the correct meaning of that sentence does not get conveyed. So if we want to convey the correct meaning, that whatever we are trying to say, it is very essential to use the correct punctuation. Punctuation is basically what adds additional information to our sentences. Before you is a very colorful representation of punctuation used in English language, starting from full stop, comma, colon, semicolon, question mark, hyphen, exclamation mark, apostrophe, slash, quotation marks, round brackets, and ellipsis marks. So we are going to discuss some of them in detail. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, there will be no room left for any kind of mistakes in your assessments. Apart from placing the correct punctuation marks in your punctuation question, another thing which is very important is capitalization of alphabets, that which alphabet needs to be capitalized. So whenever a sentence starts, the first alphabet should be capitalized. It is a general grammar rule. Not only that, whenever you are using a proper noun, which can be a name of a person, place, or thing, if it is a proper noun, you will be capitalizing the first alphabet. For example, over here, in the very first sentence, today is Sam's birthday. Sentence starts from today. So the first alphabet, T, will be capitalized. The second thing which has been highlighted in this sentence is Sam's S. Sam is a name for boy. So the first is a proper noun. So it will be highlighted. Similarly, for example, if you are using the name of a city, a name of a country, a name of a brand, the first alphabet will be capitalized. So it is another thing which you need to be aware of while attempting the punctuation question. In this particular slide, the punctuation which we are going to discuss today are given along with their signs. Pay close attention to which sign belongs to what. And on a personal note, I'm going to advise everyone to please start using correct punctuation while you are texting with your friends, your family members. If you are using correct punctuation in your daily life, this question will become a piece of cake for you. So please use correct punctuations in your daily life. Use punctuations in your daily life. Generally, students nowadays, they skip punctuation. Their sentences, they are without punctuation. Please use punctuation marks and correct punctuation marks. The very first punctuation which we are going to discuss right now is a period, which is also known as a full stop. What is the purpose of using a period or a full stop in a sentence? Whenever a sentence ends, whenever a thought process ends, you place a full stop at the end of it. You place a full stop at the end of that particular sentence. This shows that a thought process has finally ended. Before you are certain examples of how to place a correct punctuation or a correct full stop. You see, in the very first sentence, the period is perhaps the easiest punctuation mark to master. Full stop. So this was a one thought process. In the end of it, I have placed a full stop because obviously the sentence has ended. A thought has ended. So whenever a thought has ended, you will place a full stop at the end of it. Whenever whenever a sentence ends on any other punctuation mark, you will never place a full stop after it. Full stop, question mark, exclamation mark, they all are punctuation. Two punctuations cannot come together unless and until we are using inverted commas. Now we are going to discuss comma. What is a comma? Comma is basically used when is generally used in a very long sentence when two or three different thought processes have been uttered. So in order to give a pause, comma has been placed so the meaning can be easily delivered to the reader. Another use of comma in general life is that when we want to separate different things in a single sentence, we place a comma between them basically. For example, I have visited Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad and Multan. So after Lahore and Karachi, we will place a comma. Why? Because we are differentiating, we are separating different components in a single sentence. Another use of comma is basically happen when we are using coordinating conjunctions in a sentence. What are coordinating conjunctions? They are basically those words which combine, which join two independent clauses. For example, in this slide you can see use a comma before any coordinating conjunction, which can be and, but, for. That I have been there, but I would like to visit that place again. So whenever you will place a but between two independent clauses, a comma will be placed before that conjunction. And in the example which has been given in the slides, direct address. While directly addressing someone, the person's name or their title should be set off with commas. For example, we could have not done it without you, Lisa. So Lisa is a proper noun. Capitalization. Lisa is a proper noun, but before her name they have placed a comma. Why? Because in order to differentiate to whom they are talking to. In the next sentence, thank you, Governor, for your support. Thank you. Pause. Then Governor. So basically differentiating again to different ideas, that they are basically showing their gratitude to whom? To a governor. For why? For his support. So generally keep this thing in mind, that whenever we want to give a pause in our thought process, whenever we want to give a pause while writing down a certain sentence, comma is basically gives a break in a sentence, so the message could be delivered quite vividly and clearly. Now we are going to discuss question mark. What is a question mark? When a question mark is used? If you are familiar with 5 W's and 1 H, then you will know what are they. Just in case if you are not familiar, 5 W's and 1 H are those questions which start from who, what, when, why, where and how. So whenever a sentence starts from all these 6 words, for example, who are you, what are you doing, when are you leaving, why are you here, where were you, how are you doing. So whenever these sentences are uttered, it will be followed by a question mark, because these are questions. Someone has asked something to someone. In the examples given in the slide, in the section direct questions, they are basic questions. What is she doing? Are you happy to be home? Etc. But the one thing which you should note is, I heard him yell, do you hate me? Followed by a full stop. Please note that this is not actually a question. That is why it has ended with a full stop. In indirect question section, you see, the sentence is, I wonder what she is doing tonight, followed by a full stop. You can ask me a question, that why there is not a question mark in the end of the sentence. Why there isn't a question mark? Because it is a rhetorical question. Rhetorical questions are those questions when an answer is not actually required. He is just, or the speaker is just wondering something. He is not actually asking something to someone. He is not actually expecting an answer. So such kind of questions are indirect questions, and such questions are always followed by a full stop, not a question mark. Next punctuation mark is basically an exclamation mark. That what is the purpose of exclamation mark in our daily English language? You see, it is very important to know that while we are speaking, we express our emotions through our words, through our gestures, through our body movements, but how to convey that particular meaning in the text or while you are writing? So exclamation marks basically convey those meanings in the text. They are basically the medium to express your heightened emotions. Heightened emotions, it could be the emotions of fear, they could be the emotions of excitement, sorrow. Every exaggerated emotion can be explained through the placement, the correct placement of exclamation mark. For example, in this slide, you can see that if you are using, for example, I am excited, followed by exclamation mark, the reader will immediately know that the person is very happy, he's very excited. It will add some spark in the statement. But if this sentence, the same sentence, is followed by a full stop, it leaves a very shallow kind of meaning. It gives a very lukewarm kind of reaction. So exclamation marks, they actually adds emotions in your sentences. For in the next examples, which you can see that, wow, this grammar thing is so boring. So if you are, or maybe in your case, it's so interesting. It varies from person to person, right? So if you are using these kind of words, this wow followed by an exclamation mark, it can be explained that you are excited that you are reading about grammar, or it can also deliver the message that you are being very sarcastic. So, but the use of exclamation mark, they actually express what you are actually feeling. And then there are other examples that go away, that you are shouting at someone, that go away, I don't want to talk to you. So if your go away is followed by an exclamation mark, the reader will know that you are shouting. No way. No way can be taken in many ways. No way means that you weren't expecting this thing to happen. You no way that you're excited that this thing is finally happening. So basically, exclamation marks add some spark emotions to your otherwise simple sentences. Now it is inverted commas. Why we use inverted commas? Whenever a certain person is quoting the words of someone else's, he or she places those words in inverted commas, highlighting this factor that he is basically using someone else's word as they are. In the examples following, you can see that I'm hungry, she complained. So it is basically direct and indirect narration. So the girl is saying that I'm hungry. So the I'm hungry is the exact statement she has uttered, she has said. So it will be placed within the inverted commas. Next example is, what's for dinner? She asked. Nothing, her mom replied. So it is very important to know that whenever you are quoting someone else's word, they will be placed within the inverted commas. In this example, in this particular last example I discussed, what's for dinner? Question mark. Question mark will be followed after the sentence. It will be placed before the inverted commas closes, not after the inverted commas closes. And another thing you may wonder that why we are placing comma after I'm hungry, because generally speaking the statement has already ended. Then why there is comma and not a full stop here? It is a general grammar rule that while we are quoting someone else's word, we don't use a full stop in the direct narration. In direct narration, you always place a comma, and once the sentence, this narration has ended, you will place a full stop. For example, I am hungry, comma, inverted commas close, she complained, followed by a full stop. This is the general rule which you have to follow while attempting your punctuation marks. That whenever a punctuation like full stop, comma, and question mark, they are used in direct narration, they will be placed before the inverted commas closes. I hope it is clear to you. Now we are going to discuss apostrophe. Apostrophe is basically used in order to explain belonging to certain thing. For example, in the very first example, the example is given as clubs is member, that a person belongs to a certain club. In the second example is the use of apostrophe after the S and the end of the plural noun to show possession. For example, army is a plural noun. So it is an army's mess, that this mess belongs to army. So again, a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging is there. And in the next example is a plural noun. For example, girls is, you see, in girls, it is plural, not a single girl, but a group of girls. A group of girls. So I have placed apostrophe, but there is no S there. By general assumption, you need to understand that if a double S is there, the S after the apostrophe will be omitted by default. The reader, he must know that if an apostrophe is placed in this manner, it definitely shows belonging of a certain thing to a group of girls. Another place where apostrophe is used is when you omit some alphabets. For example, in the example shown here is, you should not steal. You see, we will pronounce it in a manner like you shouldn't steal. But when you will write, it will be you should not steal. So what has been omitted from this particular sentence? The alphabet O. So this apostrophe shows here that there was an alphabet here, but it has been omitted by the writer. So these are the 4 places when you use apostrophe in order to show belonging of a single person, a belonging of plural, and when something is missing from an letter, from an alphabet. Now we are going to discuss colon. As a student, I ask you that whenever you place a heading, it follows by a colon. That, do you even understand what is the purpose of colon? You see, the thing is this, after a heading, you explain that heading. That is the most genuine example I can give you right now. That whenever a colon is placed, rest assured, an explanation is going to be followed by it. If it's not an explanation, then a list of certain things, highlighting certain important factors. So colon is used when we need to explain something, right? Another use of colon is that, for example, in the very first statement, that he got what he worked for, he really earned that promotion. These are 2 independent clauses. It means that if I remove this colon from between these 2 sentences, they will basically retain their meaning. He got what he worked for is an independent sentence. He really earned that promotion is an independent sentence, but it has been joined by a colon. So basically this colon is doing what? It is basically helping out the second clause, which is he really earned that promotion, because this second clause explains the first clause. So in this way, colon is also used in grammar as well. And another thing is that in order to explain how a list is following a colon is the very first example, which is explained with the help of green color. Joe invited several friends to the party, colon, Samantha, David, and Frank. It is important that it was an independent idea that Joe has invited several friends to the party, fine. But who are those friends? This colon explains that Samantha, David, and Frank are those friends. Another thing you need to remember is that whenever a proper noun is followed by a colon, it will be capitalized. For example, Samantha is a proper noun. It's the name of a girl. So the first alphabet, which is S, it will be capitalized. But that is not the case in the second sentence, where the pepperoni has been used. The pizza came with 3 toppings, pepperoni, onion, and mushrooms. Pepperoni is basically a simple topping. It's not something branded. There's nothing special about it. Hence, it is used with capital P. It is not a proper noun. That is why this sentence is correct, and the next one where the pepperoni's P is capitalized, it's wrong. So just read through the examples. It will explain the idea very clearly. And the next thing is important that in the previous slide I explained that full stop, comma, question mark, they are placed within the inverted commas. They can be placed, but that isn't the case with colon. In the very last example, you see the truth she said was simple. Inverted commas close, colon, Dan was guilty. That the truth is a simple fact. And what was the truth? That has been followed by the colon. And the truth was Dan was guilty of a crime. So you see, in this manner we use colon in general sentences. So now we are going to have some activity in order to wake you guys up. I don't want you to sleep. So the activity is this. I have selected some lines from your textbook, first year English compulsory, and now I'm going to discuss how we are going to punctuate it. You see, such lines have been given in the exams and you just keep on wondering how I'm going to punctuate it. So I'm going to basically speak out these sentences and then I will explain what is going to be placed where. The first rule is whenever a sentence starts, it will be followed by a capital word. So the you said I wouldn't know the one that died. My dear lady, Mr. Stewart said, do you really think you knew your husband? You see, there are two dialogues in this sentence. The first, by general rule, the first alphabet should be capitalized. So you will be capitalized, I will be capitalized, wouldn't, you see, apostrophe has been omitted. So by after n, apostrophe will be placed. You said I wouldn't know the one that died. So basically, this is a dialogue spoken by whom? By Norma in the lesson Button. So you see, whenever we are quoting someone else's dialogue, we use what? Yes, we use inverted commas. So this sentence will start in this way: inverted commas open, Y will be capitalized, I will be capitalized, after an apostrophe will be placed, the one that died, full stop, apostrophe or inverted commas, close. My dear lady, Mr. Stewart said, do you really think you knew your husband? So now these are the dialogues of whom? Mr. Stewart. My dear lady, inverted commas open before M, because it's the beginning of a sentence, M will be capitalized. My dear lady, Mr. Stewart said. My dear lady, so basically it's a statement uttered by Mr. Stewart. So my dear lady, comma, inverted commas close, Mr. The M of Mr. will be capitalized. After R we will place full stop because MR is an abbreviation of Mr. Stewart is the name of this man, his surname, capitalized, said, full stop. So one sentence has been finished. Do you really think you knew your husband? So he is basically asking a question to Norma that, my dear lady, do you really think you knew your husband? So inverted commas open, D will be capitalized, obviously, start of a statement. Do you really think you knew your husband? It's a question, followed by a question mark, inverted commas, close. So let's see how I have done in this particular activity. So if you observe this activity, you see, I have made one mistake. In the very first sentence, instead of placing an exclamation mark, I have placed a full stop. What was the mistake I have made? You see, when Norma received this call from Mr. Stewart, she was crying. She was upset because her husband has just died. So definitely she was uttering these statements, or maybe when she was talking to Mr. Stewart, she was shouting. She was full of rage. She was full of pain. That is why the died has followed by an exclamation mark. And if I look at it, rest is correct. So you see, everyone can make mistakes. Even I can make mistakes. But we need to learn from these errors. That is the whole purpose of this activity, that we learn everything by trial and error, right? Now we are going to discuss reference to the context, or RTC generally spoken. The verses which I have selected are taken from the poem A Sindhi Woman, which has been composed by the poet Jan Stelworthy. In this particular slide, I'm only going to explain the pattern on which you are going to explain these verses. The first heading will be of reference, use marker. It carries 1 mark. In reference, you are going to explain that these lines have been taken from which poem? In our case, A Sindhi Woman, composed by Jan Stelworthy, who is the poet. Try to use marker while writing down the name of the poem and the poet. In context, you are going to explain the theme or the central idea of the poem as a whole. Right? Just explain the central idea. What are the thematic concerns? What is the actual purpose of poet to write this poem? In explanation, you are going to explain the lines, particularly the lines which have been given to you, nothing else, nothing more, nothing less, just those lines. If the poet has used some stylistic devices, some literary devices, for example, some imagery, simile, metaphor, personification, explain those things. Summary is not required. You won't get marks if you're just summarizing those lines. Explain them. Explain them profoundly. Okay? I hope you understand it. Things to remember while attempting the RTC question. I have basically selected these points in regard to this particular, the verses which I have chosen in the last slide. I, with my stoop, reflect was the first verse. Many students make this mistake that instead of writing poet, they write that I have made this mistake yet, or I thought so. No, you are not the person who is doing the thinking over here. It's the poet. Poet is basically reflecting. He is looking at the Sindhi woman and he is pondering over something. Next thing is focus on the keywords. What he is reflecting on, why he has used the word straight, what kind of weight he is talking about, right? So focus on all these words and explain them clearly. Again the same point, if the poet has used any literary device, explain them in explanation section. Use blue markers if you're using, for example, if you are explaining that the poet has used simile, use marker to explain simile. Or just write the word simile with a blue marker. It will highlight the point. The reader will know that you know this point, that you have actually grasped the idea behind this stanza. So students, these were the important points which I wanted to discuss in today's presentation. I hope everything was clear to you. In case of any problem, you can always contact your subject teachers. We are always there for you. And because we have to study, please pay attention to your studies. Pay attention to these slides, these presentations. It is for your own good. On this note, I'm going to bid farewell. Please stay at home, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.